the current uncertainty over the Trump administration's immigration policies lead to a brain drain that could topple American tech dominance. Joining us now to discuss is WSJ columnist Christopher Mims. Welcome, Christopher. Thanks for being with us. I know that you spoke with venture capitalists, executives, and engineers for your piece in the Wall Street Journal. What did virtually all of them tell you about the importance of free movement for skilled tech workers?
Well, the thing that they emphasize is that right now, because of technologies around remote work, even a startup can be a multinational. And if you look at multinationals, many of them have offices overseas. Historically, one of the reasons they built those offices was that they needed to go to where the talent was. So these companies are already in the habit of moving operations in order to capture the talent they need. And if things become difficult for them to move workers in and out of the country, or if they're simply afraid that that might happen, this existing infrastructure makes it a lot easier for them to simply shunt those workers to other countries or just not move them to the U.S. in the first place.
Now, you mentioned, though, in your story, the loss of this sort of community of best-in-the-world minds that come together in a tech hub like Silicon Valley. Can that sort of talent not be reproduced by native workers?
So that's a great question. The answer that I default to is that there are a lot of skills that simply aren't taught in the U.S. anymore. One VC gave me the example of there's a very particular expertise around analog circuits, and no university in the U.S. has an expertise in that anymore. So if you need that expertise, you have to go outside the U.S. You can replace some workers in some contexts with native talent. So certainly the existing high-skilled worker visa program has been abused by some companies that are looking to bring in lower skill workers to simply replace American IT workers. That is definitely an issue. But if you're talking about the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, they are in a winner-take-all industry, so they have to grab the best people in the world, and that's why they have offices everywhere.
But even when you go past the Googles of the world, tell us more about your conversation with Ben Whopper. Is that how you pronounce it? The chief executive of startup Humanize? I mean, he was one of the few who was willing to go on the record with you on this, right?
Yeah, Ben's company is very interesting because they help companies be more effective. It's a people analytics company, and they build a lot of software and a lot of hardware. They are already multinational, even though they're a small company. A lot of their customers are in Japan. And Ben said that 1/3 of his staff is already on a green card or an H-1B, and because of the international nature of his startup, he has already been thinking about offices outside the U.S. He said that if something happened that would directly affect any of his employees, he'd think about moving his headquarters to Canada. He could also move a lot of intellectual property and the fundamentals of his business to Japan, for example. So he showed a great deal of flexibility and willingness to restructure his company on the fly in order to deal with these immigration issues. Of course, the problem is now those jobs aren't going to be happening in the U.S. He's, again, not a company where it's a question of, is he going to hire inside the U.S. versus outside? He's going to hire who he's going to hire,
right,
wherever they are.
So now there's a lot of talent that's sort of not sure whether it should come to the U.S. or what the future is for this foreign talent in the U.S. Where else will this talent likely coalesce?
So it could coalesce. I mean, there's startup hubs all over the world. I mean, there's been a long-running story about people from China and India, for example, coming to the U.S. to get an education and then returning to their homes increasingly because there's the infrastructure there to support businesses. One example that I cite in the article is Canada. Canada's always been kind of a punchline in the venture capital community, but VC investment there has exploded. They finally have the infrastructure required to incubate businesses, and companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Cisco, and on have big engineering offices up there now. So they have the ability to, keep engineers there. Microsoft has been doing that for over a decade, or simply ship engineers there from other countries if they can't get them into the U.S.
All right, and Christopher, Canada, though, in the past already has quite an engineering infrastructure. I mean, their schools are top notch, and they have certainly homegrown success stories like Spotify. So are they sort of licking their chops? Are some of these companies licking their chops at these new U.S. immigration policies?
Yeah, sorry to correct you, but it's Shopify.
Oh, thank you.
It's easy to get them. Spotify is Swedish, yeah. Right, so the University of Waterloo is the fourth most common affiliation of people who get into the very prestigious startup incubator Y Combinator behind, Berkeley, Stanford, MIT. So they now have the ability. In the past, they would train in Canada, and then they would move to the U.S., and now they have the ability to stay there. Because what happens is a big success like Shopify, which is worth $4.5 billion, they have alumni who go start their own startups. They have the ability to make acquisitions, and that's how startup hubs get seeded, is big successes like this, reinvest. It's almost like agriculture or something. So now that talent has the ability to stay in Canada, whereas in the past they really couldn't because there weren't the jobs.
All right, Christopher Mims, thank you so much for all your insight.
Thank you.